Okay, welcome back to Thrive in the Future. This week I have Mike Thomas from the Catholic Land Movement. Welcome, Mike.
Hey, thanks, Scott. Thanks for having me.
So, give a little background on yourself and your homesteading journey.
Yeah, so I've been homesteading for about, a little bit over 10 years. I've been involved in various forms of, organizing and stuff long before that. Over the past 10 years, it became abundantly clear to us, trying to get our own homestead together, that one of the key ingredients is other people. And our whole experience around homesteading drove us to a closer relationship to the faith of our ancestors, which for me is Catholicism. And so that is that was a trajectory we followed over the past 10 years. And from that, going back and reading more about my Catholic heritage, and reading more about the agrarianism that's tied to Catholicism, and reading more about how Catholics have responded to the questions of industrialism and all these things, we discovered the Catholic Land Movement. And so I think that that's kind of the platform from which I launch myself these days, and find myself on your podcast, or interview, as someone who's got his hand a bit on the rudder of the Catholic Land Movement, which is just an explosive organization in terms of its vitality. There's parish groups, there's regions, there's all kinds of people. It's a colloquial network of Catholic homesteaders who are looking to support one another educationally through fellowship and through mutual aid. And then, of course, kind of centering a Catholic liturgical life at the center of those homesteading activities. And so I find myself as part of like the leadership team that's pulling that together. I live in a old colonial house in upstate New York. I have about 25 acres. I raise sheep. I have a couple hundred apple trees that I tend to. I work in the building trades, building residential houses, and I have 5 kids and a beautiful wife. And so, it's like a snapshot of who I am, and I think what's brought me to this moment with you. But I hope we get to talk about homesteading, Catholic Land Movement, my journey, and the broader vision for what the Catholic Land Movement is and where it's going.
Sure. So, with all your apples up there, what's your favorite apple?
Well, all of my apples are English bittersweet apples. It's a very, very unique type of subset of apples. All the apples that I grow are very specific for hard cider fermentation. And so I have a little wine cellar. I have, 20, 55-gallon oak barrels, and I ferment quite a bit of fruit. And then I trade it with my neighbors. And, I'm not like, I don't have a commercial operation, but I have a production level, which is like just rests at the peak of what's, allowed as far as home production. And so all of my trees are English bittersweet varieties, meaning that they have high tannins, high acids, and high sugars, in order to cultivate a performance in natural fermentation in a barrel. And so my favorite of all of them is probably the Yarlington Mill. The Somerset Red Streak's pretty gorgeous too, but the Yarlington Mill is just a gorgeous, bittersweet English apple. I've grafted hundreds of them across my property, and yeah, so that's what I do. That's what my apple crop's all about. Is about the naturally fermented, no additive hard cider.
That's great. Yeah, I have my apple trees are just now producing. Last year was the first year, and then it looks like this year is going to be pretty good. So most of mine are Red Delicious, or I've got Arkansas Black, which are good storage for the wintertime. And I really like making cider as well. So that I'm like I'm geeking out here while you're telling me this.
Yeah. I mean, I have a nice what I call the heritage American block, which is snow apples, Macintosh, Ashmead's Kernel, Spitzenbergs, Liberties, production apples, from American heritage right to the contemporary Honey Crisps and the rest of it. So I do have like one block of 100 trees that are that are more utility eating production apples, kind of your classic homestead set. So
Sure.
those are mixed in with what I do as well. But the majority of my apples are really all about this very, very niche production of bittersweet cider fruit.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So you were saying that you discovered the Catholic land movement. I heard on another podcast that you discovered an old book that was about this. Is that right? Can you give a little information about that?
Yeah. So through IHS Press, several years ago, I think back in the 80s, maybe the late 80s was the first publication of it. John will correct me if I got it wrong, but IHS Press published essays by Father Vincent McNabb, and then a collection of letters and essays by the original participants of the Catholic land movement as it was formed in response to industrialism in the pre-war period of England. And so from like 1910 to 1930, a Catholic land movement emerged in England, which set up demonstration farms and began to train young men in agricultural techniques and domestic production, and like get Catholic families out on the land. And their real motivator was this reaction to rapid urbanization and industrialization that they were witnessing in England. And so we know that, as time went on from the 1910s, into the 1930s, there were even stronger reactions to the progress of liberal republics and industrialism. But the Catholic land movement really seated itself in like the health of families, in the Catholic faith, and in like the domestic production. And so they were like training people on these demonstration farms, and they were getting together land associations, and they were working in their parishes to organize what we would understand as workshops and internships and all these things. And so I discovered this whole rich history of all these Catholics organizing like this, and said, wow, well, like this should happen again. And a couple of my friends were like, yeah, you're right, this should happen again. And so we just started doing it, and that brought me into a greater witness that I wasn't the only person that was saying we should do this again. There are quite a lot of people across a very broad spectrum who were saying we should do things like this. We should center domestic production. We should center the means of production within the grasp of like households and families, and we should train people. We should create programs that train people how to garden, how to graze small flocks, how to butcher animals, how to, heat their house with firewood, on and on, how to build simple things that are economically and skill-wise within the grasp of the common man. And it just exploded from there. I've been for the past 3 years, I've kind of just been like keeping pace, trying to keep up with the absolute tsunami of interest around that trajectory of getting back to primary things, getting back to a close relationship to our responsibility and dominion with the created world that God has given us. And so it's been an amazing thing to witness. It's been a great gift in my life, and it's brought me into contact with many people. You as one of them, and I'm continuing to follow it. There's another conference that the Midwest region has organized that's going to happen in just a month or so, in September 15th, 16th, and 17th. Past that, we're starting in like the very beginning talks of organizing a conference on the West Coast in March. And so it looks like it's just going to keep on rolling and keep on growing. There's no end in sight to the growth of the Catholic land movement. So yeah, that's a snippet of like what I'm doing and what the whole thing's about.
Cool. So you're going national, and you've got your regional conferences. This one in September, I think, is in Indiana, right?
You got it. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. And then there'll be one likely in California. I have ideas to help seed one in the Deep South, post that March one in California. And then and then back up to the Northeast in the springtime, where we had the last one. But the Catholic land movement is really even broader than national. There's parish chapters in Portugal, Australia, on and on and on. There's interest in Ireland and England, and so it's really actually an international thing that's emerging. We're just kind of getting our legs under us to be able to help cultivate the international emergence of the Catholic land movement. But it's there, it's there's interest and kind of nodes of activity all across the world at this point.
Sure. So if someone's like I'm in Northeast Kansas, so if someone's in a parish in Northeast Kansas, how do they get hooked up with you?
Oh yeah, so just go right to the Catholic Land Movement website, send me an email, be patient and persistent, apply some of those virtues of patience and diligence, and I will eventually get back to you. If you really feel compelled to jump the stack, just give me a phone call. You'll find my number on the website. I'm happy to talk with you and get you started with where you are with what you have. But sending an email through the website is probably the best way to kind of start to get involved with what's going on, and let us know that you're like on our radar. It's not just me, but a collection of volunteers who are cultivating the effort. And so I might pass you to a regional leader that could then help you plug into conference organizing or parish workshops or reading groups, mutual aid groups. There's all livestock swaps. They have, the Midwest has like a livestock swap group now. They're just on and on and on. It's just it's far beyond. It's far beyond anything that I could keep wholly in my vision. It's just growing on the peripheral endlessly, and I'm kind of keeping up with it, trying to help people find one another. And so sending an email to the website can help you plug into that, that task of mine of connecting people.
Yeah, that's pretty good. So as someone moves into your area, or they move out of the city, how do you bring them into the fold, or help them get established? Like, all of us know that the first year garden doesn't go very well, right?
Yeah. So I usually just meet people where they are, with what they have. And I listen a lot, and then whatever, there might just be very obvious fruit of like, hey, there's this guy, 2 doors down from you at another parish who's a market gardener, and why don't you go help him for a season before you really, go full steam on your farm? Has anyone given you an evaluation of the best use of your land? Hey, there's this guy who's been homesteading 10 years down the road from you. Why don't you connect with him? Maybe he could go over and give you a little one over and tell you, fruit trees aren't going to work where you're planting them. They're going to work over here,
Sure.
So I usually listen is the first, and then sometimes I listen to people and they're far away from even owning property. They're just they're in their parish and it's a dream, and they want to convince their wife or their family to move out to a piece of land. And how do they do that? How do they talk to them? And so it's a whole other level of coaching and relationship. So I really just am meeting people where they are, and trying. And sometimes I get young men who don't have any intention of buying land anytime soon, but the idea excites them. The idea of homesteading excites them, and its relationship to Catholic social teaching excites them. And so they want to start a reading group in their parish and read through Chesterton or Leo the 13th or something. And so I'll guide that. There's a myriad of ways that I might connect with somebody, but it really is dependent on where they are. And sometimes I meet people and they're 10 steps ahead of me. They're in their 70s looking to transition their land. And how can I don't have any kids who are interested in farming.
Oh, really?
How can I help? How can I help connect? Can you help me connect with young Catholics who want to keep on what I'm doing? And so every single situation that I encounter is different, and it takes a lot of listening and time and conversation to kind of know what the right course of action or interaction is with a Catholic land movement for that person. So there's no like there is like a set a vessel or parameters, right? We have parish chapters, regional leaders. We cultivate action on a parish level. Then we have regional leadership teams that are developed by witnessing the fruit of like action on the parish level. And then I coach those leadership teams to put on a conference, and then gear those workshops to very practical skills that are very entry level to kind of soak people up into from other parishes into more action that feeds back. It's all this kind of like circular synergy that we're trying to create of action, cabbage. And so there is like, somewhat of a formula, but at the same time, it's also, I'm also very much listening to people and trying to, find where they are and help them cultivate what they have. And sometimes that's like a window box, sometimes it's a pasture field, sometimes it's an inherited farm that they don't even know what to do with, so there's a whole scale of what I meet with people.
Yeah, we have a lot of folks that are in our Orthodox parish that are having chickens in town, right? So, but they can't have roosters. So we hatched a bunch of chickens, too many roosters. So we've been processing chickens, and then we teach each other. We have a slogan on the podcast. We're not an expert, but we're still going to get stuff done. And then we got together with them and paired them with more experienced folks and taught them how to process the chickens. And then the kids are getting more, or teenagers are getting more in touch with that's where their food comes from.
Yep. We are my wife right now is working out with another woman in our parish we have 30 meat birds sitting in our barn right now, and they have meat birds sitting in their barn. And so our big families are going to swap days where the kids and the husbands and the wives and the older ones, we all get together and process birds together. And so first them and then ours. And so these types of activities they're not really, growing a flock of 30 meat birds really isn't that hard. And then the fellowship that grows out of like a processing day between 2 or 3 families is significant. It's a good thing. And so those are the types of activities that from the Catholic land movement perspective, we're trying to cultivate in other parishes, and if we see someone who's like, yeah, we're doing land birds, that's great. And it's like, oh, cool. Is there somebody in your parish who would be interested in doing 100 meat birds? And then everybody gets together for a processing day. What does that look like? Can we help you do that? That's always the Catholic land movement is kind of encouraging that next step with people.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, that's real impressive. The organized on the macro level as well as the micro level down at the parish level. That's really neat.
Yeah. There's the principle of subsidiarity, which is a tenet of Catholic social teaching, really guides the Catholic land movement in that we're like trying to push activity and authority to the lowest level that a various action necessitates, but not forsaking the higher levels of organization and action. So it's like you end up with this arrangement where you're like you need a large organization to witness everything and to help cultivate and to help collect the stories and to help kind of push people to action, but you're always pushing that action and those activities and the authority around the organization to the lowest level of function, which really tends to be like a handful of families or a few strong men like in a parish. Those are the engines of actual like boots on the ground. So there's this beautiful like synergy across the layers when you apply the principle of subsidiarity, which a lot of people always mistake as like you don't have anything central or big, and that's not the case. There's some things that only function at a high central level, but there's other whatever I can push to the lowest level I do, and then you just keep on cultivating from there. And so subsidiarity as a principle is something that like the Catholic land movement really pushes into. And so there's a lot of times we'll like, set up a leadership team and just be like, okay, you tell us what do you need from us as a central organization? How do we support your efforts? What's your vision? And then kind of holding them to that vision, helping them cultivate and move towards it. So it is kind of a great organizing model. It allows like an informalness to the overall organization that really keeps things moving. Where sometimes if you have too heavy structure, too heavy kind of top-down organization, you inhibit those lower levels of at which like action has. And the Catholic social teaching of subsidiarity, I feel like inverts that, where the highest levels are serving the lowest levels, which are doing things, and so yeah, so it is great. It is fun to witness. It's a fun way to organize. For me on that macro level, I get to see all these beautiful parishes of people doing awesome things. I get to talk with fellows like yourself. I get to it's fun at the high level, and I think it's fun at the low level too, for the people with their hands in the dirt and planting cabbage and gutting chickens. So
Yeah, it's great. So what kind of traditions or ceremony type things do you have coming up with the fall and then the holidays? How do you incorporate all that in that liturgical year in there?
Yeah, so my habit wise, the turn of the season is going to turn from like, this is kind of the lull where we're in right now is somewhat of a lull,
Sure.
especially with the amount of rain we've gotten. I have to move sheep a little bit, but like I'm not really harvesting and I'm not really planting. It's a lull. I'm going to work every day and, keep reading books and everything else, but that's soon going to end as harvest season kind of kicks back on. And so as harvest season kicks back on, it's going to be harvesting apples, harvesting animals, harvesting gardens, processing animals. The things are going to get really, really busy come like mid-September, late September here. And that kind of busy carries on until we get to Yuletide, rising, and then Advent, and the that cycle of the liturgical calendar, and then things kind of slow down again. We get
Sure.
into holiday time, and it's more about focus on the family, focus on the life of Christ. We have a Jesse tree that we'll take out here as part of like our liturgical year, and the kids will go through all the roots of the Christ story in the Old Testament.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll kind of talk about all that, and there'll be readings daily where we kind of engage those things and then see how Christ satisfies or answers a lot of the Old Testament prophecies, questions, open ends, and then we'll move into Christmas, and then so that's got a whole life in our church, and a whole life in our family, and everything else there. So and at that point, it's like we're kind of out of the intense agricultural period. We have that wintertime lull of hearths and meals, and but so the next phase, the most very immediate and next phase is the work of harvest,
Mm-hmm.
which I always feel like around here starts with a hops harvest. Hops get harvested around here like that third week in August.
Sure.
And I volunteer at a hops farm down the road. And that's always like my key. When that farm calls me, it's like, hey, Mike, we need your help, like come help us. I'm like, okay, harvest is on, and it's not just the hops, it's the garden, it's the apples, it's the sheep, it's the, turning everything over, closing up all the raised beds, on and on and on. I can go with it. And then, well, by the time we like finally get a break from that, we collapse into Advent and the liturgical life of the church that is so rich at that moment as we switch out of we switch back into holy days. And so yeah, that's that's the next 5-6 months that I'm looking at, and it's a beautiful cycle to be part of. It's really nice how the liturgical calendar and I don't know how it is for Eastern Orthodox. I feel like we likely share lots of similarities in our liturgical calendars, but it's beautiful how the agricultural calendar like overlays the liturgical calendar, and like
Sure.
there's lulls and pitches in both of them that complement one another in these
Mhm.
unique and beautiful ways. And so yeah, so harvest is next, and kind of in a lull. I'm kind of focused on like professional life and and those things, and then come the end of August, everything's gonna turn on again.
Yeah, it's been raining a lot here, so we're running a few weeks behind. The chestnuts don't look very big, or you know, and things
Yeah.
like that. So it'll probably be later than usual.
Yep. I have to say, all the rain for us has kind of been somewhat of a blessing, where I haven't watered like the garden once, where you or like trees, or usually I'm messing with irrigation and pulling this broken line here and fixing this broken line there. And like this year, I've just been like, boy, it's raining every other day, if not every day. It's
Sure.
like living in Louisiana. I'm like, okay,
Louisiana.
I'm not gonna mess with the with the irrigation lines. Things seem like they're gonna continue to be okay, So yeah, it's nicer. This year's a little bit, this summer's been a little bit easy on us, farm wise, mostly because of the abundance of rain. We get these like really warm, sunny mornings, and then we get a light sprinkle in the afternoon, and it really is. It's like living down south. It's it's been nice for growing things. My garden looks great. The trees look great. Animals look great. Everything's like looking good this year. Where some years it is like by the time you get to that second week in August, things are dry and brown, and
Yeah.
you can tell it's like you're carrying water buckets all the time, or you're fixing lines, and you just praying that things make it to harvest. But not this year. It's green like mid-July here,
Sure.
so things even though the flowers are all one-eyed Susans and Queen Anne's lace and all those late flowers are popping up, it's still green here. So
Mhm.
everything's happy.
Yeah, sounds good. So give the website one more time and how they can contact you.
Yeah, so it's www catholiclandmovement.info, and the website is a work in progress. There's lots of like, you'll find various sections that are still like hopes, and then you'll find other sections that are like very productive and have clear, fully fleshed out bones. One of the ones, the conference organizing has really been an engine around how the Catholic land movement is putting itself together and pulling itself up. And so if you're in the Midwest region and you're a Catholic and you're interested in like connecting, I really encourage you to go to the Indiana conference. Go to the website, check out the Indiana conference. I think we're somewhere around like just shy of 200 tickets now, and we're only going to sell 300, and so we're getting close there. That I think that 350 including kids, so I think it's like
Wow.
really close. So if you're interested in attending, I think last time I checked we were at like 140 or something with people, and then 90 something kids on top of that, so we're getting really close to like the max. So if it's something that interests you, jump in. There's other parishes. There's gonna be workshops in the Midwest region. Out of Cincinnati, I just found out they're gonna host a weekend workshop series. The parish there is like very active and just really wants to like keep the momentum up. So I think right post the conference in October, there's a Cincinnati parish that's going to host stuff. I can plug you in if you're in the Midwest, to a lot of stuff that's going on there. If you're on the West Coast, looking for volunteers, workshop presenters, people who are interested in helping us pull together a West Coast Catholic Land Movement conference in early spring, late winter. So March, April, sometime around there. And so if people who are listening who may be on the West Coast, reach out, get in touch. There's lots of stuff going on. There's lots of stuff going on out there, and we'd love to plug you into it.
Yeah, it sounds good. We have a friend in our online thriving community that's in Southeast Kansas that I'm sure she would like to contact you from her Catholic parish. So I'm sure she'll be tickled.
Great. Awesome.
Very good. Thanks, Mike. I appreciate your time tonight.
Yeah. I thank you so much for giving me the platform to talk to the, your listeners, and God bless you, Scott. It's been great talking to you.
God bless you too. That was a great interview. Thanks.